When I was a kid, my parents enforced a rule that my brother and I found utterly absurd. No negative labels. Not just obvious insults like dumb or stupid, but any term that painted someone negatively. We couldn't call someone irritating, selfish, or even rude. If we tried, Mom would pause us mid-sentence and insist we rephrase. It drove me up the wall, especially in grade school when my cousin Liam would borrow my toys without permission. Instead of calling him a thief or thoughtless, I had to say, "When you take my stuff without asking, it feels like you don't care about my boundaries." Try saying that as a 10-year-old without rolling your eyes. My friends' houses were a free-for-all. I remember a sleepover at Sarah's where she and her sister yelled, "You're such a loser," at each other, and their dad just shrugged and said, "Quiet down." At my house, that would have sparked an hour-long lecture on respect and emotions. Even at relatives' homes, Mom's raised eyebrow kept us in line. I loathed that rule with every fiber of my being. Fast forward to age 25, living with my partner, Ethan. We'd been together 3 years, talking about engagement, maybe kids someday. But we argued, a lot. Typical stuff, dishes, finances, plans. Our fights escalated so quickly. One minute we'd be debating who forgot to pay the electric bill, and the next we'd be dragging up old grudges from months ago. The worst was when Ethan labeled me careless, self-centered, whatever. Those words stuck like glue. I'd obsess over them for days. Does he really think I'm careless? Is that who I am to him? It gnawed at me until I'd bring it up, restarting the cycle. One night, we had a brutal argument. I'd forgotten to grab something he needed for a work project. He was stressed, I was exhausted, and soon he was saying I was unreliable and only care about myself. I fired back, calling him overbearing and impossible to satisfy. We hurled awful words at each other. I stormed out, driving to my parents' house at midnight, tears blurring the road. Dad opened the door, made coffee, and let me cry at their dining table. When I could finally speak, I spilled everything. The cruel things Ethan said, the harsh words I threw back. Dad listened quietly, then asked, "What do you love about Ethan?" The question threw me. I listed his humor, his kindness, his drive. Dad nodded. "And what does Ethan love about you?" I mentioned my spontaneity, my loyalty, how I make him smile. Then Dad asked, "Does Ethan truly believe you're unreliable and self-centered?" I started to nod, but hesitated. Did he? Or was it just anger talking? Then Dad said something that floored me. "When you label someone, you stop seeing them and only see the label. That's why we never let you kids use negative names. Not because the words hurt, but because they trap people in boxes that are hard to escape." It was a revelation. Every time Ethan called me careless, I became just careless to him. When I called him overbearing, he became nothing else in my eyes. We were turning each other into caricatures, and it was tearing us apart. The next day, I went home, and Ethan and I had the hardest, most raw conversation of our lives. We made a pact. No labels, no name-calling, even in the heat of the moment. We'd focus on actions and feelings instead. It was tough, way tougher than I expected. We messed up often, but something shifted. Our argument stopped spiraling. Saying, "When you forgot that thing for work, I felt overlooked," was so much easier to hear than "you're unreliable." It left room for understanding. 2 years later, Ethan and I are married. We still disagree sometimes, but it's different now. Less like a war, more like a problem we solved together. Recently, we had dinner with my parents. Mom asked how we were holding up, and I shared how we'd navigated a recent disagreement. Dad grinned and said, "Your mom and I have been married 32 years, and we've never once used a negative label on each other." I stared at Mom, stunned. "Never? Not even in your worst fights?" She shook her head. "Fights pass. Labels linger. Why would I box in the person I love most?"